Hi there, Natalie with you today with a new process video for PinkFresh Studio. And today I'm going to create a layout using the Happy Heart collection and the new Nested Hexagon Hot Foil and die set. I love this, this set. And because this month, the challenge for the month on PinkFresh Studio's blog is geometrical shapes, I thought it would be a great idea. So I'm going to start with a little trick to have these hexagons pretty much line up. And for that, you're going to need either washi tape. I am using Scrapbook.com's mint tape. So you're going to see that I'm going to take advantage of the grid in my mat to actually line up my hexagons. So I'm going to lay down the piece of tape on the table, on the mat in this case, face it with the sticky part facing up, and literally I am going to line up the hexagons. I'm going to use all of them but the littlest one, and I'm going to leave around 1.5 inches extra of the tape on the side, and I'm going to use that to create kind of a hinge to attach the paper, because one of the things you have to be careful with these dies is that you want them to be symmetrical, so you're able to die cut them. So creating that hinge helps me make sure that I have an even space on both sides of my hexagon. Again, I'm gonna follow the procedure or the steps for my glimmer machine. I have the Spellbinders glimmer foil machine, so I'm gonna use the steps in my machine to get the foil look on my page. Now that I have my first impression, which is the hexagons, I am actually gonna use the solid hot foil plate from PinkFresh Studio to create the negative effect of that impression. So I'm gonna warm up my hot foil machine. I'm gonna use the leftover foil that I have, and again I'm using hammer mill. I think it's called color cover stock. I'm not so sure, but it's the paper that PinkFresh Studio Leah and Heather loved, and I actually was able to get a few reams here in Toronto. So once I have the two effects of the hot foil, I have the hexagons foil, and then I have the negative effect, which means I have the wide edges of the hexagon with a foiled frame around them. So now that I have the two effects, and I did it twice, I did one of the passes with Aura foiled and the second pass with Champagne foil. I wanted that, the Aura foil has that rainbow kind of effect while Champagne is really bright. I wanted a combination of those for my page. So now that I have my pieces, my pieces foiled, I'm gonna go ahead and start die cutting the pieces. I want to create, think of it as frames, hexagon frames out of it. So I have to use pretty much all the dies in the Nested Hexagon die set to create the hexagon. So it's gonna cut the frame and then leave a little space to cut the next one. So this is gonna take me a little bit of time to just line up the hexagons so that it gives me, I'm gonna say, and it's not gonna be completely 100% symmetrical, but the best that I can do. And I'm gonna take my time with this, and I'm gonna do this 4 times because I foiled 4 pieces of cardstock. So I'm gonna take that off camera and finish it, and when I'm done, I'm just get them on the side, and then I'm gonna continue working on my idea for this background. Now I know that I want to create a grouping of hexagons on this page, but I want to make sure that the attention is driven to that. So my idea was I am actually going to create guiding lines, and to do that I am cutting 1/4 inch strips out of the pattern paper in the collection, and I'm going to choose pretty much tones of peach and fuchsia, blue, like the light blue, the mint tone, some of the teal. I don't want any yellow because I already have that tone in the foil. I want to stay away from that. So you're gonna see that I am cutting, like I said before, 1/4 inch by 12 inches strips out of the pattern paper. So I'm using quite a few of them, and I've pretty much cut all my papers. I don't have any paper of mine. I think I only have one that's a full paper. The rest are already cut up in pieces. I love this collection. So I'm just, like I said, I'm gonna cut 3 strips out of each one of the pattern papers. Again, these are 1/4 inch by 12 inches long. And I'm actually, once I have them all ready, I'm gonna set them aside, and I'm gonna show you the idea. So I'm using white cardstock for my background because I want all the things to pop here, and I want something really soft. So my idea is I literally think about a weaving paper, but I'm not gonna weave it. I'm just gonna create what do you call it, I forgot the name, an angle with them. So I want a straight angle, that's the word, a straight angle created out of the strips of pattern paper, so that right at the vertices or at the meeting point of the two lines, that's where my cluster of hexagons is gonna sit. So you're gonna see that I've pretty much laid down the foundation of my page. I just want to have an idea of what I'm creating. So now that I'm happy, I'm gonna go ahead and start gluing the pieces of paper. I'm gonna start gluing my pieces of paper around 1 1/4 inch from the edges of the paper, and I'm gonna leave a tiny little white space in between each one of the strips. I just wanted to have that little bit of separation. And again, like I said, I am staying with like a really soft color palette, very pastel, very vibrant pastel, but away from the yellows. So you're gonna see that I'm gonna try to make sure that I follow the same pattern that I glued my papers. I'm gonna follow them, and for example, on the line on the left, the last paper, I'm gonna say the last strip is like this dark teal. I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna repeat the pattern, but I'm gonna make sure that the teal is not in the inside of the page. So you're gonna see how when I glue my paper strips, I created that angle, and then whatever's left over, like hanging off the piece of cardstock, I'm just gonna go ahead and trim it off, and then I have a flush, these two lines that are just going across my page and creating a meeting point where it's gonna be the focus of my layout. So now all I'm gonna do right now is just start setting up the hexagons in a way that they create a cluster that kind of breaks off. That's the best way to put it. And I have these two pictures. That's my son and my cousin, also goddaughter, and my kids adore this child. They adore her. So I have a few pictures on her baptism. We were the godparents, and my son was just couldn't get enough of holding the baby at that time. Well, she's 6 years old now, so time has passed. So because I want to also create a title, I need to bring the same design to the bottom of the page. And I don't want to create an angle because I want to make sure that that angle is right at the top of the page, so your eye goes to that. Instead, I'm just going to bring some of the same formation of lines at the bottom of the page. So you saw me that I just brought it in to make sure that it makes sense. And now that I know it's going to work, I'm going to go ahead and start backing the frames. So I don't want to leave them white. I want to give them some pattern paper on the background. So I went into the collection and picked the papers that had a solid background. I don't want anything that has patterns or anything that's going to take away from the frames or the pictures. So I'm using again tones of fuchsia. I went with this really light shade of blue. It has a really soft pattern, so it reads more as a light blue. And then the biggest frame, I'm actually gonna make it out of the teal paper, and that's the B side of the 2x2 little cards that you can cut apart. So you're gonna see that I'm adding a little bit of foam adhesive between the foil frame and the pattern paper. I want to create that shadow. I want to create that dimension on my frames so that it looks like once you put it on the paper, you see that the different levels on the page, and that's just very appealing to my eye. Again, you can go ahead and just glue them to the back of the frame. It's completely up to you. I just like that soft shadow that you create. So now that I backed all my frames, I have them on the side, I'm gonna go ahead and create that little strip of pattern paper strips at the bottom of the page. Once again, I'm going 1 1/4 inches from the bottom of the page, and my strips are going to be 6.5 inches long. I think it's 6 1/4, something like that. So you're going to see that I'm putting my ruler just to make sure that I know exactly where, the point to glue them, and then I'm just going to follow the same formation. This time, because remember when I did the top horizontal layer of strips, stripe is the same thing. So I'm gonna make it finished. The inside strip is the teal, the dark teal. I'm gonna do the same at the bottom. Make sure that the inside strip, the one that goes towards the center of the page, is teal, so that I'm able to follow the pattern the opposite of the horizontal line at the top. I know it might be confusing, but you see it better, so it gives you a better idea. Now that I have that ready, I'm gonna go ahead and start putting everything together. And my frames are all backed. The only mistake that I did here is that I had backed every single one of my frames with foam foam adhesive in between the pattern paper and the frame. When I glue them together onto the page, some of them are gonna kind of like nest inside each other, so I had to carefully remove some of the foam adhesive so that I can slide them in behind, or so that I can slide the little frame in between the paper and the pattern and the frame. But it took like just a little bit of, nothing tear, no paper, just I had to be very careful to lift up the frame and pull up the foam adhesive. So you're gonna see that my biggest frame is the one that's gonna sit right at the junction of the two lines, and then literally I am using the different sizes of hexagons kind of to break that idea. I want to make sure that it kind of follows that that angle shape that I have at the top. So you're gonna see that I go large, medium, small, and just creates that cluster. And then to go to the bottom to the title, I'm gonna bring the same idea but in a smaller scale, just because I don't want to have something so big. I'm just gonna use the smallest 3 sizes of frames from the set to create that little cluster at the bottom, and I know that's where my title is gonna sit. So you're gonna see that I have my pictures. I'm actually gonna go ahead and glue them, and I'm gonna add a little bit of foam adhesive behind them just to make sure that they pop a little bit from the page, a little bit higher than my frames, just to make sure that when you see it, the first thing you see is the pictures. And that's one of the reasons why I also transform them to black and white, so that they are they work nicely on the page, but they also pop from the page. Again, once I have that, this is all about embellishing, and I'm gonna use pretty much pieces from Happy Heart. All the embellishments, you're gonna see them all in a little way or another one here. First of all, I am using the wood veneer pieces. I love the word hello, and I thought it would be perfect right at the top. And the one that says celebrate you, I love the fact that they again have that straight lines, especially because I'm gonna put flowers behind them, so that's gonna soften all those angular shapes. I am gonna use some of the floral ephemera. I'm also gonna use the cardstock stickers, the floral cardstock stickers, to create our embellishments in this page. Kind of that, like I said before, the flowers is going to soften all those angular shapes and edges in this layout. I am using the title ephemera to add the word family. That's going to be my title. It's going to be family time, and I'm using the script to word love just as a decoration on the bottom right corner of my photos. You're going to see that right now I'm just adding some of the floral ephemera, creating clusters, and I don't want to over decorate or over embellish my hexagons. I want them to read as hexagons, so I'm being very careful of where I put my florals. I'm gonna make sure that I have one behind that celebrate you. I want to make sure that I have something that ties my pictures to the top of the layout. I want to have something in between the two photos, and then kind of stretch it a little bit more after the word love. And then I want to bring some movement. So instead of me covering the rest of the hexagons, I'm actually going to add butterflies at the edges of the hexagons, so that I don't lose the shape, but there's something that brings interest to the hexagon. Once I have that, for my title, like I said before, I am using one of the title ephemera pieces that pull the word family, especially because it had that really nice script, and it's like dark green, so it's really different from what I have on my page. And then I'm gonna use the mini puffy alphas. I'm gonna use the ones in the kind of it's not purple, it's like a fuchsia tone, just to make sure that it brings some of that tone at the bottom, especially because I have quite a bit of blue in that corner. And then just to finish this, I did not want to add gold because that was going to take away from the frames. Instead, I am using some of the gems just to add a little bit of embellishment and a little bit of pop of color at the same time around my layout. My lines of journal, I'm going to add them after, and I'm thinking that I'm going to add them right underneath the photos, but that's about it. I love how this turned out. It was super fun. I love the geometric look of it. I love the color palette, and I hope you enjoy it. As always, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me, and remember to subscribe to the channel because there's always beautiful stuff being added to the PinkFresh Studio channel. Take care, guys.